Welcome to the Charles Carroll Society Show. I am your host, the self-appointed bard of the American Redoubt, and I am here to tell you the truth. It may not be the truth, but it's the truth as I see it. Today on the Charles Carroll Society, we're going to talk about what is the American Redoubt. What is the American Redoubt? The American Redoubt is a political migration movement for political and cultural conservatives. Political migration is the concept that people move for political or cultural reasons. For example, you may hear someone who is extremely progressive, who is living in rural Georgia, say, "I'm going to move to San Francisco, where my progressive lifestyle is more accepted." This person is a cultural migrant. He did not simply move for a job, although he may find more economic opportunity in San Francisco. He moved primarily for cultural reasons. I find it interesting that this is celebrated on the left. The American Redoubt encourages conservatives who have the desire and who can swing it to move to conservative or red states for the express purpose of living in areas that are more conducive to your political and cultural conservative lifestyles, often trying to live a more self-sufficient life and working to make these areas even more accepting of cultural based upon Orthodox Christianity, classic Western civilization, and individual liberty. We call that making the state redder. We call these people who do this partisans or redoubters, people who take action to improve their community. However, perhaps you have no idea where to move to. Perhaps you have no rural family left to build around. Many of us Americans have lost our rural roots. Uncle and aunt farmer or rancher are long gone. We are several generations off the farm. Thus, if you do not have your own family in some conservative rural red state, where do you go? How do you start? As the American Redoubt movement came out of the self-sufficiency movement, it already had a lot of data on areas that make great places that you can essentially homestead in a modern way. Modern homesteading includes getting out of debt, which is very important, becoming a more self-sufficient as much as you can, and really refocusing your life around people who celebrate your presence, not simply tolerate it. Also, as a side benefit, your children may actually meet someone who they can marry and have grandchildren that think like you. Thus, using the information from a list of states that appear to be conservative and inexpensive places to restart your life, the American Redoubt came up with 3 core states: Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming. Also the parts of 2 other states, Eastern Washington and Oregon. I personally encourage people to move only to the core Redoubt states of Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming. While the American Redoubt came from a self-sufficiency movement, it is not a prepper movement. That is a mistake I see made often. The person who created the American Redoubt movement was James Rawls, who owns survivalblog.com. He does run one of the most popular self-sufficiency blogs on the internet. However, he could not have been more clear when he created the American Redoubt. He said he is encouraging people to think about moving from very liberal states for political and cultural reasons, not preparedness reasons. The American Redoubt is not a doomsday cult. The American Redoubt is not a group of racists or white supremacists. I am one of the primary voices of the American Redoubt. The lying legacy liberal media has no idea how diverse of a group we are. They have no idea who we're married to. They have no idea who we've adopted. They have no idea simply the racial diverse group of people who choose to associate themselves with the American Redoubt. The American Redoubt does not have memberships. We do not keep a running list of people. We have no formal organization structure. We hold no meetings. As a matter of fact, we work to ensure our websites are reachable using anonymity tools like Tor Browser Bundle. The American Redoubt is not primarily focused on politics either. My blog, the Charles Carroll Society, is the only one that really focuses on politics. We encourage people who move to the American Redoubt not to simply take advantage of the wonderful communities those that have lived there before us created, but to help put your shoulder to the wheel. We encourage people to become active in their local communities when they move there in any way they choose, no matter if it's volunteering at a food bank or starting a scouting troop. I personally choose to become politically active. That was the way I was going to help out. But it's not the primary focus of the American Redoubt, nor is it what most readouters focus on. The American Redoubt is not a new form of the Tea Party. The primary voices of the American Redoubt are James Rawls, who owns survivalblog.com, John Jacob Schmidt, who owns the blog Radio Free Redoubt, which is actually a blog and a radio show, my blog, the Charles Carroll Society, and podcast, and Redoubt News, run by Sherry Duvall and her husband. There are actually other people who choose to self-associate with the American Redoubt, but as they do not appear to want media attention, I will not point them out. James and Survival Blog focus nearly exclusively on preparedness and self-sufficiency skills and tools, not politics. John and Radio Free Redoubt focuses a great deal on communications such as ham radio and communication security. He does cover events on his radio show and podcast, but again, politics is not his primary focus. Sherry and her husband up at Redoubt News do amazing work, writing incredibly in-depth pieces covering a lot of issues that focus around the Western states. If liberals didn't have such a stranglehold on journalism, Sherry Duvall and her husband in Redoubt News would deserve some type of journalist award. She has covered stories very in depth. Simply no one else could get these stories. The American Redoubt is simply political conservative people who may be living in very progressive or liberal states and feeling unwanted. They may want to move to areas that are more welcoming of cultural and political conservatives and do not really know where to go, however, or actually how to move. The American Redoubt concept was started to help them. Before we close, I would like to thank a longtime patron, James Manning. Some guys are outside what we call outside the wire or outside of the American Redoubt, but are spiritually here with us and strongly support the Redoubt growing. I want to thank you very much for your continuing support, Mr. Manning. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up below. That helps this video get seen by more people. And please think of subscribing and following me on my primary blog, thecharlescarrollsociety.com. Viva Cristo Rey, Viva Cristo Rey, Viva Cristo Rey y the Virgin of Guadalupe.